This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
The Science Notes podcast on OAR FM Dunedin, brought to you by the Division of Sciences at the University of Otago. I'm Dave McMorrin. Over the next half hour, I'll be chatting with a graduate science student about their research, their passion for science, and the things that fuel their creativity. Well, hello there and welcome again to another episode of Science Notes. My name is Dave McMorrin, and this time our guest is Elena Piere. I didn't actually check I could pronounce your last name correctly. That's not right, is it?
No.
I can tell by your expression. How do I say your last name?
Oh, it's Elena Piere.
Elena Piere. So I got it about as wrong as you possibly could. My apologies. But as someone with a last name like McMorrin, I understand how that goes.
Yeah.
Elena is doing a PhD in food science / commerce, she tells me. And so we're going to be talking a bit this time about what she's been doing in the area of food waste, which is, I think we've had some people on the show previously. So you're part of a group that does this in various contexts, yes?
Yeah, I'm part of the Food Waste Innovation Research team.
There you are, right, good. So how did you find yourself in the Food Waste Innovation team? Theme.
Just by chance, really. Yeah. I did a Master's of Sustainable Business at the University of Otago.
Okay, yep.
Which is through the management department. And spent a year telling everybody who asked that no, I would not be doing a PhD. And one of my mentors, who's now head of department, sent me an email near the end of the year saying, I know you said you don't want to do a PhD, but I still think you should look at this. And it was an advertisement that was looking for a PhD student to take on this particular piece of research because there had been a funding grant from the Ministry for the Environment for this particular piece of work.
Government money.
Yeah.
You take that what you can these days.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those, it was too good of an opportunity to say no to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you are studying food waste.
Yes.
Tell us about food, in general, about food waste, before we get into specifics of yours.
Yeah. So food waste is a really major problem globally. It's a huge contributor to climate change.
In what sense?
So when food is wasted, it breaks down. It releases methane, which is significantly more damaging in the short term, more potent of a gas than carbon dioxide. And so when it goes to landfill and it's decomposing, then it's contributing to climate change in that way. But also it has huge ethical dimensions to it as well. Large portions of the global population experience some level of food scarcity, malnutrition, and massive amounts of food in other areas of the world are being thrown out at various parts of the supply chain.
I suppose too, if you're a farmer growing a lot of food, which ends up getting thrown out, then that's kind of it has impacts for the environment as well in terms of what's involved in making the food that you actually don't, as it turns out, need.
Yeah. So it's called food loss and waste. So at that production side, that falls under the food loss.
Right.
And that could be because there was more grown than there was demand for. It could be that it didn't meet aesthetic properties, various things. And then food waste is the consumption end.
Right.
Where for various reasons you have the food, but it has not been consumed. And that's the food waste piece. But it's a flexible definition depending on who's defined those boundaries.
Yeah. So you're interested in the food waste then and why people are not eating the food that's being made available?
More specifically, how we can reduce the amount of food that is being wasted within the specific system that we're looking at, which is aged care.
Yeah. So that's your particular take then thing for your PhD, is you're looking at the amount of food that's being wasted in aged care facilities in New Zealand?
Yeah, so food waste in aged care is the context within which the study is framed, but we're looking at behavior change. So how can we change behaviors to achieve food waste reduction? Yeah. So you could take the same methodology and processes and put them into a different context. But yeah, our specific goal, my PhD goal and my Ministry for the Environment project goal are aligned but a bit different.
Right.
So the project is seeking to reduce food waste within aged care by 10% through the introduction of this toolkit. My PhD is looking a little bit more broadly at the methodologies around behavior change and what that looks like within organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From memory, and I can't remember the student's name, my apologies, but the previous student we had in from your group was looking at food waste in the residential colleges at the university.
Breyer,
that's right. In terms of seeking to understand and change behavioural things, presumably that's a different sort of a thing in a residential college full of 18-year-olds than it is for an aged care facility.
Yes and no.
Yes
there
and no.
are similarities, but there's also vast differences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so your contribution to this is going to add but be the same but different to what Breyer's are and the other things. What I'm getting at is it's not a one-size-fits-all approach to this.
No, definitely not. And what we're finding is it isn't even a one-size-fits-all approach within the aged care sector.
Right.
And it's very much dependent at that organizational level what the priorities of that organization are, the skills that the staff have, their values, their knowledge. It all shapes what that looks like in practice.
It's not just the residents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're looking at how many different facilities?
We have 14 different facilities and 8 organizations.
Throughout the country?
Throughout the country, yeah.
And so you're visiting them all and doing audits and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so broadly the study has 3 distinct parts. So first we went to each of the organizations and through a food waste audit we measured how much food was being wasted and where. And then I also ran focus groups and some interviews with the people who work and live there. So that looked like kitchen staff, care teams, managers, as well as the residents themselves. And that was really looking at what are your perceptions of food waste? How do you see it being managed or not? And what are the barriers and enablers to reducing food waste within this workplace? We then took all of that, did a lot of analysis, and pulled out the key learnings, which brought us to the second phase, which is where we were designing a behavior change toolkit specifically for reducing food waste within aged care. And so we brought stakeholders together, which included village managers, kitchen managers, care managers, sustainability managers, food service managers, dietitians, and ran a series of workshops where we asked, where do you see a need for food waste reduction? How do you see it being able to be achieved? And we'd come up with a food service model of all the places within the care home where things happened associated with food, and then looked at what interventions could we do at each of these stages. And that gave us a massive amount of data. We had, I think, 158 different potential interventions. And so then it was really about narrowing that down to the smallest that we felt captured the full food service cycle and met the needs across a diverse group, but wasn't redundant. And so what that ended up being was a toolkit that has 28 potential components. That toolkit was then sent to all of our participating sites, and they went through it with a lot of framing and guidance around it. But they selected 3 to 5 of those components that they felt would be effective within their facility.
So what sorts of things did that look like?
So we asked that everybody set a 10% reduction goal, because that was kind of in line with the MFE project. And we asked that everybody nominate a food waste champion on site. And then beyond that, we have a huge range. So there's sites who are measuring their food waste daily throughout the 3-month intervention phase.
So that's going through rubbish bins?
No, we actually have these smart scales. Which make
that seems
things
better.
much easier, or labour intensive anyways. So it's a smart scale that sits on the bottom of the bin, and it records everything that goes in and exports it to an online dashboard.
Right.
And so they're getting near real-time feedback on what's going in. And so we've separated out by plate waste, preparation waste, and serving waste, so we can see where within the organization that waste is coming.
So you have different bins.
Different bins for each source.
Right, so you're not counting so much how many apples and bananas and whatever's are going in, but this food from this part of the process and food from this part. Right.
Yeah, and we chose not to look at the composition of that, largely just because of the practicalities.
Yep. Yes, it's one thing for you to go through the bins, but to expect them to go through the bins.
And also some of the practicalities of the context. A lot of residents are on texture-modified diets. And so actually identifying what that thing is not an easy easy mix. We've got some orange mush and we've got some green mush and some white mush. So a couple of different reasons. But beyond measuring, we have things like protected meal times. So within, say, 12 to 12:30, there won't be medication rounds. There won't be other things happening in that dining room. It is a protected space for residents to eat, so reducing those distractions for them, offering seconds, putting a resident choice meal on the menu, lots of different things around communication to help those interdepartmental conversations to be increasing the amount of information that the kitchen is getting from the caregivers, how fast that's happening, things like reception letting the kitchen know if a resident leaves so that they know not to send the lunch meal that day. A number of things around menu, offering choice.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. To what extent menu is a big plays a role in this?
Yeah, it's a really complex problem.
Yeah.
No one thing is going to fix it, and to just say let's make sure we ask residents what portion size they want. That will have an effect. But there's so many other pieces that you couldn't say that's the single answer to this. It's very layered. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who doesn't really know about this at all, I would have thought that it's a balance between having a lot of options for menus so that all the residents have something that they want to have, but the more options you have, the more potential for waste you have.
Yeah, and it's a balance. If you have only one food option for a meal, you will likely have a lot of plate waste because there's a lot of residents who don't want that and choose not to eat it. But you'll have very little serving waste because you know that you are catering to 50 people and this is the quantities you need. If you introduce a second, you then are introducing ordering. You have issues around, do they remember what they ordered? When are they choosing what they're going to eat? Are they allowed to change their mind? And so you might have less plate waste, but you might have more serving waste because you have more variables in there.
That was something actually I was going to ask you as well, because my wife is involved with people in this sort of age group, but and some of whom are in care facilities. And this idea that people don't want to eat what they ordered because they forgot what they ordered.
Yeah.
That must be another dimension of this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, from the resident side, there's so many different variables. There's the whole thing of being shifted out of home and into a new environment where they've gone from having a lot of autonomy to very little autonomy.
Making their own food, having made for them.
And then you also have things like the medications that they're on can affect when they're hungry, how hungry they are, how they taste the meals. Depending on the setup of the care facility, you can have things like they might be completely separate from the kitchen and so never get any of those meal cues, like smelling the food, which triggers appetite. Then you have cultural aspects. Is the food meeting the cultural needs? Yes. Also, a lot of things around expectation. So what chicken parmigiano means to me might be very different to what it means to you. And if what's served is not what you think that was going to be, will affect whether or not you want to eat that meal. So it's so layered, and it can change significantly even from day to day.
Yeah.
And so for this project, we have very clearly made the decision to look at it from the organizational side, what is within the control of the organization within their processes and systems, rather than looking at it from the resident side. Because you have to remember that the average age of entry into aged care is 80 years old. And the average length of stay is 18 months. This is to the care home level, where they're at hospital level care.
Yeah.
They have significant cognitive decline. They're there because they need 24-hour support. And so to say to this group of people, we're going to do this thing so that you're not throwing away as much food, I think there's a lot of moral issues in that.
They've got other things to worry about.
Yeah. And so, also thinking about, what's their quality of life.
Yeah.
And they might not want to eat that meal, but you still put it down in front of them because that meal time matters to them.
Yeah.
And being part of that social system. And so it's really complex.
Yeah. Presumably, though, the people who are running these facilities are very concerned about minimising the amount of food that's being wasted, because it's all money for them.
Yes, definitely. But there is also those care ethics that come into it, and regulation as well to protect that quality of life. Whole having to provide a meal. You can't not provide a meal because you're like, they're not going to eat it. Yeah. So you're working with 8 different providers across the country. Is there much of a difference in how all this is going to play out between providers? I mean, some of the huge ones compared to perhaps some of the smaller ones. Does this look different for what they can do? Yes and no. There are definitely differences in resources that are available. But some of our smaller sites have been really successful so far in reducing their food waste. And I think they have freedoms that the larger sites maybe don't have. Yeah. They're not as restricted to a centralized menu that's the same across the whole country. So there's more flexibility in that. Whereas the larger providers might have access to technological resources that help improve efficiencies and accuracy, which the smaller providers don't.
Yeah.
So there's sort of pros and cons on both sides of it. Yeah.
So I think the notes that you sent me said that you've done a lot of all the data collection now. And
not quite. No. So we are in the midst of evaluating the toolkit.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So halfway through.
Right. So, but the end is, so how far through the PhD are you?
I've just passed my 1 year.
Oh, okay. So heaps to go then.
Yeah.
Oh, really good.
Yeah. We'll finish data collection at the end of, or beginning of December.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
At this stage, do you have thoughts about what lies after the PhD? Given that you said you were never going to do a PhD, and now here you are.
Yes and no. I am very much based in Dunedin. This is where my family is. Lots of connections to friends and place. And so I don't really want to move away.
Yeah.
So I would love to work in academia. But I also am very aware that Otago is the institution in Dunedin. And
Yes,
so,
increasingly so, unfortunately, yes.
So, yeah, I would love to continue working in the space of research, and I love teaching. But whether that pans out with an actual job opportunity, time will tell. My background is in sustainable business, and I have been approaching this whole project from that management lens, very much so. And I would love to be in some space of work that is helping businesses transition to more sustainable practices. Right. What that looks like.
So not necessarily staying in the particular food waste area as such.
Not necessarily.
But just in that general trying to make things better.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to staying in the food waste space, but also I'm completely open to other opportunities.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're just about out of time. Thank you very much, Elena, for coming and talking to us about what you've been up to. And all the best for what remains of your data collection and implementation thereof. And it remains for me to thank you all out there for listening. And we will see you in the next episode. You've been listening to the Science Notes podcast, brought to you by the Division of Sciences at the University of Otago. To listen again, or to find other episodes in this series, go to Otago Access Radio's website, oar.org.nz, or to your favourite podcast platform.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.